Hey everybody, it's May 6, 2022. Welcome to another Flea Market Finds episode, and this is a pick of stuff that I got at an estate sale. Somebody I know from the flea markets that I bought from previously, got to know him over the years, knows that I pick machinist tools, and he went to an estate sale that was run by, it was just like a yard sale type of thing. It wasn't a professional estate sale, and when he was there, he saw that they had a lot of, they had a metal lathe and some stuff, and he doesn't really deal with that stuff, so he gave me a call and he says, hey, you might want to come out and take a look at this stuff. And what I was told was that any fair offers above scrap, that all this stuff was going to go to the scrap yard if they didn't get a decent offer on it or a fair offer above scrap. And I was kind of surprised when I got there because, the sale had been going for a couple of hours already, and luckily for me, nobody came along that needed a lathe or a Arbor press and cut a deal on this stuff, so I ended up scooping a heck of a deal. Everything that you see behind me in the truck, including some small stuff in the cab that we'll get to, for $200 I got all of this stuff, and wait till you see what I got. Well, we might as well start right here with this cream puff. So this is a Craftsman walk behind brush trimmer. This is the style that you can use the really heavy string trimmer line, and you just loop it through these loops on this thing here. And I had one of these made by Troy Belt years ago. It had the large spoked wheels, and I actually really liked it. It had like a bigger motor on it. It was like a 6 horsepower, but it was a really handy, nice thing to have. It was really well balanced. And then it was stolen, unfortunately. So anyways, that ended up actually at the scrapyard, believe it or not, and they ruined it. But I digress. So I got this for $10. I almost wanted to pass on it because I don't need another project. I've got too many projects right now I can't get to. But then I gave it a pull and realized it still has compression. No really bad noises or clanging or anything when I pull it, when I turn it over. Just looks like it's just been sitting a long time. So I think it's going to be the typical clean the carburetor up and then the damn thing might work. So for $10 I couldn't pass it up. I even have the plastic shroud. I didn't want it to fall off because it was unclipped. So it's in the truck, but for $10, sure, I'll take a chance on it. The tank is bone dry, so I don't know if the gas evaporated out from just sitting or if they emptied it before they put it away. But I don't know. So this might be in an upcoming episode of my own version of Will It Run. I don't think that guy in New Hampshire has a patent on that or copyright on that, but I could call it Will It Chooch, maybe, or something like that, right? Guess we'll do this next, since some of you more eagle-eyed guys may have already spotted this. So that's what, about 4 inches thick. And it's about 12 by 12. And what this is, for those of you who don't know, this is called a swage block. This would be classified as a blacksmith tool. This thing right here, which is stuck in there, pounded in there, hasn't been out of there probably in a long, long time. This is called what the heck is this called? I forgot. It's a T. It's a something T. Oh man, I don't know. It's another blacksmith tool. Oftentimes, if you've ever seen an anvil, oftentimes the anvil will have a square hole in the top. That's for different tools to be inserted into, and this is one of those tools. I haven't found any markings to tell me who makes this, but apparently from what I did, from the research I did online, it's not unusual that a lot of the manufacturers of these did not mark them or did not identify them. It's actually a pretty nice one considering the size of it. It's pretty heavy. The fact that this was still sitting there on the ground and nobody had even touched it is amazing to me. I just call that pure luck that no blacksmith guys came along to this estate sale, which I guess is completely believable. because these are actually pretty well sought out by blacksmiths. I'm torn as to whether or not I want to keep this. I don't really do blacksmithing, but my son is in a metal fabrication shop up at the Voctech school, but he tends to be focusing more on welding. So I actually think I'm going to sell this because it's just, it's, I could turn that money into something that I would really rather have, I guess. So I think this is going to go on the block. The pun, it's going to go up on the block. Get it? So next up is this stand right here, which is for the Arbor press, which we're going to get to in a moment, but the stand's kind of in the way, so let's do this first. So this is just angle iron, all welded up. The stand fits in there perfectly. I mean, the press fits in there perfectly. And, you know, that press is so heavy that if I hadn't seen that it was in this frame on this stand already and had probably been sitting there in that shop like that for years, I wouldn't have believed that this was necessarily going to hold up to it, to the stresses. But it has everything. All of this welding and everything here is pretty old. I got to show you this. I got a kick out of this. So here's some interesting work here. Nearest I can figure is that this stand was already made for something else and it was too narrow to fit the press, or whoever made this made a mistake on their measurements, realized it, and then said, oh, this is going to be wider at the top here. So this looks like this was flame cut with an oxyacetylene torch, and then they just stuck a little piece of square bar in there, or scrap, and welded that in to bridge the gap. So that's what's tying this together. They did the same on the other side, so that one's not even lined up. But again, they flame cut it. This was all put together, and then they came back, flame cut it, spread it apart, and did this. And then they flame cut out the area here for where longer pieces could pass through the press. So I'm beginning to think that maybe this stand wasn't originally for this press and they just modified it. You can see this horror. So I don't know. If I end up keeping this press, I don't even know if I want to keep that stand. I mean, like I said, it was on there. I will say this though, there was a rope tied around the top of the Arbor press, and the rope was tied around the Arbor press, and then it was tied around a big beam in the garage, and that would keep it from falling over. Now, originally I figured that was a safety strap of sorts in case somebody was putting a lot of leverage on this press, because it's a ratcheting style press, and it started to tip. But I guess it also might have been a safety feature in case this stand decided to let go. This is what I call a big Arbor press. Now, those of you guys who watch my channel regularly have seen in the past on picks that I've come into good deals on Arbor presses. For the longest time, I had a Dake Arbor press in my shop that I liked. I sat it right on my bench, and you know, it wasn't so big that I needed to have it on its own stand, although it could have been. And then last year, I came into a deal locally where I was able to snag not one, but two Greenard Arbor presses for, I think it was, I ended up getting those for $150 for the pair, which I thought that was a sweet deal. Even though the Greenard number 3 is pretty much ready to go, just needs to be cleaned up, maybe painted to spruce it up a little bit. And the other one was a Greenard number 3.5. Now the difference between a Greenard 3 and a 3.5, the 3.5 means it's a ratcheting press. It has the ratcheting mechanism, and because of the extra force you can develop with the ratcheting mechanism, they actually give it a higher rating as far as tonnage. I don't remember exactly how the Greenard numbers run, but I do believe those might be 4.5 or 5 ton presses.
I don't recall. I know that the numbers don't necessarily make sense. So there are 3 big names in good old American steel and iron, USA made arbor presses. Greenard, Dake, and Famco. Greenard is the only company I know of that's still in business making manual arbor presses. I think they're special order only, but the Greenard plant up in New Hampshire, not too far from me, well, I mean, 1 state over from me, is still in production. They're into much more sophisticated hydraulic presses, computer controlled, all that fancy mumbo jumbo. But they still have them in their catalog, so I think you can still order them, and I think they literally probably make them to order. But there's plenty of good used ones floating around. So the Greenards are sought after, and then the Dake and the Famcos. Now, I've talked about this in the past, in my previous arbor press video. There are reasons why the Greenard is considered superior in some ways to the Dake and the Famco design, and the main difference is on this front here there's a plate. I can take this plate off and I can completely remove that ram. I can also shim this for wear over time to make up for wear and keep the ram, you know, more, I don't know, have it less slop in it, right? So they consider this to be a potential weak point, or some people consider it to be a potential weak point. Although most of the force is downward, what ends up happening is at some point, because of the rotational effect of the rack and pinion, you are exerting forces this way. So, for what it's worth, I mean, look at the age of this thing. This thing's been probably used and abused. Matter of fact, I know it's been used and abused, and I'll get to that in a moment. So anyways, this is a Famco press. This one was made in Racine, Wisconsin, US of A. Kind of in the shadows there, but it's right there. USA. And it's a Model 4R. And just not to be outdone like their competitors, the 4R does not mean it's a 4-ton. This press, 4R for ratcheting, is rated as a 6-ton press. This is now officially the largest arbor press I've ever owned. So when I say used and abused, used because of its age, but abused, look at the top of this ram. This is all mushroomed over. This is, I mean, this is like a 2-inch square piece of steel that over the years has been beaten on with such force that they mushroomed this all over. Now the reality, you know, a little bit of grinding and I'm going to be able to spruce that up like it's never been there. I'm not going to worry about it. If I decide to resell this, maybe I'll spruce it up a little bit. I'm actually still kind of in a state of flux. I haven't decided yet what I want to do. I never even got around to fixing. So backing up for a second, the two Model 3s, the 3 and the 3R that I got for short money, I didn't bother putting the 3 in the shop because I wanted to fix up the 3R and put it in my shop, but the 3R's got a jammed ram. So I got to take care of the jammed ram. Say that 5 times fast. Anyways, my most pressing issue right now is, pardon the pun, pressing issue, get it? Is that I need this camper to pull, back up there, Steve. I need this truck to pull the camper because we're due to go camping in 2 weeks. So I got to get this emptied out. The wife's giving me my marching orders. Get this truck cleaned out, get the hitch in it, get that trailer pulled out so we can clean it up and get ready for camping. So I got to get this off the truck. I couldn't even lift that up from laying down by myself. That's how heavy this sucker is. It took 4 of us fairly burly guys. I bet you I was the weakest of the 4 guys there that day, lifting this thing onto the truck. But we did it. So, anywho, let's get it in underneath the temporary tent storage here, just to keep it from getting rained on anymore. And now that I got it off the truck and we can see the other side of it, we can look at the other bit of bad news about this arbor press. On this side here, there would have been a hand wheel. Because this is the ratcheting model, the hand wheel was probably about that big in diameter. On some of these, the non-ratcheting version of the Model 4, they would have a larger diameter wheel with handles on it, and they call that a ship's wheel because it almost looks like the, you know, kind of the kind of wheel at the helm on a big tall ship or something like that, a big sailing vessel. But anyways, other than that and the aforementioned carnage here, I mean, look at that. They got to the point where they mushroomed it over so far they start to split the metal. And that is wild. Just to give you an idea next to my hand how large this is. I just can't get over that. And the handle was with it. We just took it off because, you know, it was kind of in the way during the loading process. But yeah, I'm really happy with that. And the other big item I got was the lathe. Been sitting on a bench, very dirty. The bench was a steel top table with steel legs that I initially passed on, and ended up calling back actually a few days later and talked to them, and it was still there. And I said, would you take 30 bucks for that table? And he said, yeah. So I'm actually scheduled to go back out and pick that table up. I decided might as well have the table for it. Even if I decide to sell this lathe, it will be nice, because it already was pre-drilled with the holes and everything to mount this and the secondary unit, which I'll show you in a moment. But anyways, getting back to the lathe. So there's a tag right here that says Reynolds Machinery. Can't quite see where they're out of, but it's Reynolds Machinery. But as most of you realize, that has nothing to do with who made the lathe. Many of you have already recognized just by looking at this thing what this is. For me, the tail is right here on the gear change cover, and we can clearly see that this is a 9-inch swing, 3-foot bed lathe by the South Bend Lathe Works of South Bend, Indiana. So this is a South Bend. I'm not sure what model it is, but it's a 9-inch swing change gear lathe. At the top it says South Bend Workshop Precision Lathe. So I'm guessing that might mean that that's like maybe a more home hobbyist lathe. I don't know. I really don't care. I'm not that concerned about it because I got this lathe for 50 bucks. And I got the Arbor press for 50. It was 100 bucks for the two. So, as you can imagine, I'm very pleased. So this is what's called a change gear lathe, meaning we have no quick change gearbox here. So in order to change the feed rate or the threads per inch if you're threading, in order to do any of that, you have to change this combination of gears on the end here. And there's a chart over here that tells you that. Now, the gears tend to go missing with these lathes. Fortunately for me, the table that this was sitting on had one large draw, and I opened that up and I could see a bunch of change gears and other miscellaneous parts that clearly were for the lathe, and that was all included with this. So let's take a quick look at that. So just dumped everything that was in that drawer in here. Here's a belt. There was a belt on there. We ended up cutting the belt because in order to get this stuff all unbolted from the table and loaded into the truck, I had to cut the belt because we couldn't get this little piece out on that belt, and I didn't want to go through the trouble of unmounting the spindle or that whole thing. It was kind of tucked behind there. Long story short, just don't worry about it. All right, you got some stuff here that looks like it may have nothing to do with the lathe. All right, well, there's an appropriately sized holder. Oh, so this is the back gear assembly, but there's already one on there. So then I looked at this and noticed this has got a broken tooth right here. So our theory is that somebody replaced the back gear assembly on this lathe already, and then they just kept this one for whatever reason. That's a change gear. 80 tooth. Change gear. Change gears. So it'll take some research to figure out whether or not I've got a full set of change gears here, but I've got a decent amount, let's put it that way. Then there's these two larger gears. I'm thinking these aren't for this lathe. They're way too big and robust. So more than likely these are, there was an old Pratt & Whitney lathe really rusty in the barn. Took me down to the barn to show me that. I think these might be change gears for that. Got 3 tool holders, a parting blade holder, regular holder, and then this was a threading tool, what's left of it. No lantern style tool post. I did find this, which is interesting. This T-bolt kind of fits in there, so maybe they had a quick change post on there at some point, I don't know. Got 2 properly sized dead centers, so got what appears to be a drive plate for turning between centers. I almost thought this was scrap and then realized this is the chuck key, and then the only thing I found in that pile of junk that fit this was this, so I'm thinking that this is what somebody was doing for a chuck key. Then there's this cool little wrench right here. This is probably original South Bend, and what this is a wrench that does the job of locking the carriage right here. It unlocks the tumbler assembly, which is how you reverse the drive. You can either disengage the feed completely, or you can flip this the other way and it will reverse direction. It even fits these 2 screws right here, which I'm assuming are to swivel the compound. So I went to turn this and realized, oh, that's broken, or well, that's actually missing the piece underneath that this would draw up. When you turn this bolt, it's supposed to draw up the piece and clamp onto the ways to actually lock the carriage. And then when I was looking through all the junk, I found this piece. So it broke. But I'm glad to see that the guy kept it, because I can use this as a pattern to make a new one. This is the rest of the junk that was in the drawer. I'm pretty sure it's just junk, but you know, if you guys spot something in here that screams South Bend, you could tell me in the comments, but I think it's pretty much just garbage. A piece of stock. That's a lacing for a large flat belt. Small thread. I wonder what that was for. It winds up. It's got a coil spring, and let go, it'll whoop, wrong direction if I do it this way. So I don't know what the hell that was for. I think that's for a lock. Don't really know. Interesting little screw cap. There's also a bunch of old tools and stuff laid out on some tables. I picked through and I put together this pile of drill bits. I only took the larger drill bits and more taper ones. These will sharpen up okay. I found this one little clamp. Unfortunately, there were no large older clamps there. I took all of the old Billings or Williams style wrenches. These style here are often used on lathes. These are all too big for that lathe, but you know, still nice to have. This is a old Sears Craftsman drill index that's pretty much all but empty. But I've got enough extra drills I could fill this. This has got a sticker on it, Sears Surplus. Was $19.98, now $12. I was probably with drills at the point. And then this is a Huat, whatever it is, drill index that's got some drills in it, but mainly I wanted the index. This is an early IRC branded resistor cabinet. So these are the values of the resistors, you know, 1 megohm, 2.2. So this is just for holding carbon resistors of this style here. There's not much left in it. There's some downright junk in here too, some old caps that are going to be junk. But I mainly wanted this assortment here. These are handy to have on your electronics test bench for storing parts, and now they're becoming a little bit collectible. The last time I saw one of these at Brimfield, the flea market, the guy wanted like 40 or 50 bucks for it. I was like, I thought that was nuts, but I think I got that for like $5. It ended up being like 35 bucks for this pile. Oh, and that included this house jack that was underneath the table the lathe was on. It's one of those, you know, heavy duty for jacking up a house deal. It's not as tall as the other ones I have, but it's still plenty stout enough. With the Arbor press, I also got the what may be the original daisy wheel. If not the original, it's got a, you know, it's a good fit for it. And they did have the remnants of the wheel, the hand wheel. Unfortunately, some of the pieces of the spokes were missing. Otherwise, I could actually just braze it all back together. I could still actually just make, I guess, some spokes if I wanted to keep the original wheel. I might do that. That might be a nice little project. And so this is the original drive assembly for that south bend. Basically, it takes a regular electric motor V-belt drive and lets you. Well, that's interesting. That's actually a flat. It's a flat pulley. Anyways, turns it into the stepped deal here, and then there's the lever on the lathe that you flip the lever, and what that does is that tilts this in far enough to take the slack off so you can change the belt to the other steps, and then you flip the lever back and it tensions the belt, and there's an adjustment on that. And then this is the original drum switch by the looks of it that was on here, and it's interesting. It says forward, off, reverse, but I'm betting that this was never wired to reverse the motor. I wouldn't necessarily say this is original either, but so the story goes that the guy who lived in this house was an electrician and not a machinist, which is why there was an absence of machinist tools. But he did a lot of bartering over the years for work and stuff, and that he got this lathe and trade, and it basically sat there, and he probably didn't use it much at all. But it still is nice to have, you know, it's all complete. Basically, I could slap this back on the table, clean it up, and do a couple of minor repairs, and this is a good usable lathe for somebody. Here's the last of the large items, which would, again, qualify in the category of I need another project like I need a hole in the head. This Kohler engine was sitting there, and I asked what the story was on that, and he explained to me that that came off of a Troy-built iron horse rotor tiller, you know, an early one. So it's a Kohler K161T. So, yeah, it says right on, it's a 7 horsepower Kohler, and doesn't run. A lot of rust in the tank. Recoil doesn't work, but I was able to turn the shaft on this side and see that it does turn over, but it doesn't seem to have the kind of compression you would expect out of it, you know, for it to run. So the gentleman I was dealing with there, he and I both theorized that it's either got a stuck or a bent valve. But I got this for 10 bucks, so I couldn't resist, you know. It was one of those things where if you didn't want to take the 10, then I would have one less project I have to deal with. As it is, I might not have to deal with this. I might try and just sell this the way it stands. I do think I should try and fix this recoil assembly if I can now. Although, I think that's a broken spring in that recoil. Yeah, it's going to be a broken spring. That's unfortunate. Well, I manually wound this back in so I could get one good pull out of it, and just for giggles, spark plug wire was off when I got it, so I'm thinking they were checking for spark, so I don't even know if it has spark, but I happen to have some starting fluid here, and if I have spark, even if this has some compression, I should be able to get a pop out of it. Oh. That does not sound good at all. The good news is It's not, that noise is all in this assembly here. That has nothing to do with the, yeah, intake valve, I would say, judging from what I'm hearing. Intake valve is not sealing for some reason. Ouch. All right, enough of that. Yeah, I definitely believe that this came off of a tiller. Look at the dirt in there. I also would say it would maybe just a tad behind on maintenance. Then I made another pass through the tables and picked out a bunch of other stuff. Made another pile. Ended up getting, that's a punch made in Japan. Never have enough of those. All around tool holders. S.A. Hallstrom, Worcester, Massachusetts. Huh. That was probably off that Pratt Whitney lathe. There's an Armstrong. It's a boring bar. Double-ended. Big chuck key. The only precision machinist, and that's stretching it right there, tools I found were these 3 calipers, these 2 insides and this one outside. What I thought was kind of neat about them is that I believe they are all Craftsman. That's a Craftsman. That's a Craftsman. No, this one's a Union tool. This funky deal here, okay, it's a genuine vice grip tool, but I mean, I get how it works. You hook this on. It's almost like a pipe vise. I don't know. So he was an electrician, so maybe this was for like large metal conduit. There's a parting tool. There was one square D breaker there, QO style, which is what I use in my panels, and none of the panels in the house were QO. They were mismatched stuff, so I figure I might as well take that. And then this kind of neat. This is the 12-inch Shark, patent pending. The Richards Manufacturing Company of Aurora, Illinois. So this has got a kind of neat mechanism on in here. There we go. Right, and then this locks it. Kind of neat. I like the hard casing on it that they did to it. Kind of neat. And then this cabinet scraper of brand unknown, but it just got a really cool look to it. Kind of like a oh god, I'm having a mental block here. What are those hammers that I like? Begins with an L, right? Do not see any maker's name on this, which is unfortunate because it's a really cool old vintage scraper. I wonder if there's anything underneath here. But anyways, Lixie, that's it, Lixie. You know the Lixie hammers? Reminds me of a Lixie hammer handle. I don't know if Lixie ever made scrapers. Yeah, what pick wouldn't be complete without me hauling home some vintage, and I do mean vintage, old electronics junk. So this is a ATR rectifier power supply. Model number is a 610C-ELIF. Serial number C bottom. Okay. Output volts DC, 6 volts up to 10 amps or 12 volts up to 6 amps. So it must be dual range. Yeah, there we go. So you flip it over this way for 12 volts and you flip it over that way for 6 volts. And this is kind of neat. You can lock it out. So it's locked in the 12 volt position. It's got a voltmeter and an ammeter built into it. It's got these archaic connections here. Looks more like an electric fence power supply. Voltage control. Oh, it's not even a, oh okay, so it's not even a potentiometer, it's a tapped power supply. You know, on off switch, we get a line fuse. Beefy, stout little sucker. Top here it says caution. Keep this side up. Do not block any ventilating openings. ATR Manufacturing Company of St. Paul, Minnesota. Huh. And an old Variac. Seco, S-E-C-O, Power Stat. And this says it's the Superior, Seco is, S-E-C-O is the Superior Electric Company of, I can't see it, something Connecticut, USA. Bristol, Connecticut. So, Variac, for working on old stuff. Real old stuff, because it's not even a grounded one. Kind of out, look at that cool Art Deco styling on there, huh? Oh yeah, something to get excited about. I'll tell you, the last couple of these I bought, I paid 20 bucks a piece for, and I sold them both for 50 bucks a piece. This one, I'm into this for next to nothing because it was thrown in with the whole deal. And so if I get 30 for that one, that'd be great. Well, this is interesting. I just found on eBay one of these that sold. And it was a, it's this one here. 8-inch patent pending Richards Manufacturing Company Shark Adjustable Pipe Wrench. Antique tool. $100. That's what it's sold for. Oh, free shipping, but I mean $100? So either the 8-inch patent pending one is a lot rarer, or, well, this one's patent pending also. So this is a 12-inch version of that. That's going to be interesting. Almost done. Went in the basement and there was some shelves way in the back. It was a, the old root cellar type of situation there with a shelf on it with a ton of canning jars and stuff in the canning jars. Most of them were quart canning jars, but I found a few of these quart ones. I mean, smaller canning jars, I think a quart. And then I found a few of these larger ones here. This one's really got a nice blue color to it. This one not so much, but I don't know, I just kind of like these. They're kind of neat looking. When put them on a shelf up in the window and the light comes through them. You can also put like colored glass beads and stuff like that. Listen to me, I'm quite the homemaker, aren't I? Then they had a pile of stuff that were already, weren't even trying to sell. They were already thinking of it as just plain scrap. And I went over and I saw this cable, and I was like, wow, that's a nice heavy cable. There's actually two of them here. The first one I pulled out was this one, which has this on one end, all right, which is a 3-phase plug. Well, that's actually, no, it's a 125 250. So that might be for like a camper maybe, I don't know. So get this, so you had this on one end, right? Going to this on the other end. Now, this was a guy who obviously really trusted his knowledge of trade, because this is risky. But basically, you're just going to make sure these are clipped on before you plug this in, so that these aren't just live and able to hit something. So you can imagine that would make your life pretty exciting. So I'm not sure what he was using this for, some kind of a test cable by the looks of it. But this is good old made in the USA cable. And this is, I think I can find a spot that isn't so dirty so I can read it. Well, I'll tell you right now, it's copper. Type SO, there he is, 10-4. This is number 10 for conductor. So this is suitable for 30 amp, whereas number 8 would be 50 amp. But imagine what that cost you to buy today. One of them, like I said, I rolled it out and it was about 25 or 30 feet. At least 20 feet, maybe I'm exaggerating, I don't know. Then up on a shelf, up high up, over and above the table where the lathe was, I spotted this old chandelier. And I just kind of liked the look of it. I thought, this might be a more valuable light than anybody realizes. I was surprised that this was still there too. There were plenty of antiques people that had come through and looked at stuff, but nobody saw this. It's got the old cloth covered wiring, so that definitely dates it. It's got a kind of neat, I don't know what this is, black wood or something here with these little orange diamonds on it. It's got this hammered look to it, bronze color or copper color, but I have not been able to find anything to indicate to me who makes it yet. So, if any of you guys know lighting, you know, I mean, maybe it's still too modern to be of value. I'm looking now, I'm seeing eyelets at the bottom of each one of these here, and I'm wondering whether or not there is pieces that were supposed to be hanging off of that are missing. You know, without knowing the manufacturer, it's going to be almost impossible. There is a name here, but it's just Leviton, which is the name of this switch. But it's an early Leviton switch. So somebody who knows lighting might be able to look at that switch and say, oh, well, you know, based on that switch, that's 1940s or something, you know. Yeah, so that insulation's pretty much shot. There's a close-up of that other detail that I thought was kind of neat. Yes, if anybody knows who might make this light or what its value is, say so in the comments, please. And the last two items were freebies. First of which was this German Black Forest cuckoo clock, a little miniature one. The bird's still in there, but sadly we looked everywhere and nobody knows what happened to the weights or the pendulum. So all we've got is the clock body with the works in it. It's marked Germany. It's got the little bellows boxes here for the thing to go cuckoo. And then of course the pendulum would have hung here, that's missing. Mechanism's in there. Not that it's going to do you much good without the pendulum or the weights. And this little decorative part just clips on to here, onto the roof. Yeah, well, you get the gist of it, so. So they thought I admired it so much they said I could have it. And then we were talking about old radios, and they didn't really have any old radios. And I said, well, actually, I said, what, you like old radios? I said, well, actually, I said, I collect vintage CB and ham radio equipment. And I said, and the funny thing is, it's been a long time since I actually used any of them. I have a whole bunch of them, and I, have them on shelves, and I don't even have an antenna on my roof. Next thing I know, he goes out back in the house and comes walking out with this dirty old Shakespeare big stick. No whip on it, but, you know, it's just a fiberglass whip was what went on top of these. And, I was thinking I didn't even want it, but, you know, he was nice enough to go and get it for me, and he treated me so well on these other deals, I figured, well, I'll take it. They just, you know, they just wanted to get rid of it. All right, so we'll call this one a wrap. And you know, at some point we'll do a video on some of the stuff in this pick. Maybe we'll look at that motor, or clean up that lathe, or fix up that Arbor press. Yeah, you never know, it could happen.